All right, welcome to the, let's see, it is December 21st, or 21st? 14th, sorry. I'm a week ahead of myself. Budget hearing for the town proposed budget, town council proposed budget, I'll amend. Before we get started, I'd like to open the hearing with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, as far as old business, I don't have the minutes. I literally just got, no, we're good. We just got them at 4:30, so we'll take care of those on the 11th. So I would like to turn it over to Town Administrator Steve Fournier. If you'd like to give us a presentation on the town budget, that would be great.
If I can get the
You
presentation
can get to it to
going.
work.
Use me for a minute.
You're good. Uh-oh.
Nope, it's coming.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Good evening. As the Budget Committee has already seen and the members of the Town Council have seen, this is the proposed operating budget that was approved by the Town Council. Tonight is the public hearing. And deliberative session will be on January 31st, which is that last Saturday. Let me just double check. I just want to make sure I give you the right date. 30th, sorry. January 30th will be deliberative session. The town will begin at 9 a.m. at the high school, and immediately following, which I believe is estimated at 10 a.m., will be the school. So the presentation, the first slide is just the economic indicators. As we say, one of the first things that we always look at is the consumer price index to see how the economy is going. The CPI measures changes in the price levels of consumer goods and services purchased by households. This includes fuel, food, housing, and clothing. In July 2014, the CPI national average increased 2%. The Northeast increased got the wrong one. In 2014, correct, 1.8%, and Boston increased 1.7%. However, in 2015, the CPI only increased 0.7% over the previous year on the national level, and decreased 0.2% for the Northeast, and only increased 0.2% for the Boston area. The main reason for this is oil. Oil prices continue to drop. The CPI doesn't increase. As a matter of fact, you probably already heard, Social Security will not be given a cost of living adjustment this year, which has not happened in a while. The second thing is unemployment rates. The national average right now is 5.5% unemployment, which is 1% lower than the previous year. The second would be the county is at 3.8, which is about a 1 point lower than last year as well. The state is at 3.5, which is lower than previous year. Portsmouth Metro, which we're a part of, is at 3.1% unemployment, and the town itself is at 2.8, which is actually negligible. And I guess at that point, it's difficult to actually see any change. The current tax rate is $24.96 per thousand. The largest portion of that, or 72%, it goes to the school, with 61.74%, or $15.41 going to the local school, and 9.86 going to the state school. Tonight, you're discussing the $6.02, or the 24.12% of the tax rate, the town. And the remaining 4.29%, or $1.07, is what the county. And this is just a 10-year comparison of the tax rate. And I did the exercise of what would the tax rate be if you adjusted it for inflation. Currently, our tax rate, as I said, is $6.02 per thousand. If we were to adjust it for inflation since 2006, the tax rate look at about $6.82 per thousand. Now, this next slide is the assessed value of the town. Why is that important? Because that's what we actually determine the tax rate on. When you hear the number per thousand, it's per $1,000 value of your home. The way we look at it is the per thousands of the total assessed value. Last year, you saw a significant decrease from $744,000 $744,537,983, down to $711,970,612. That was expected due to the softening in the real estate market that everybody saw in the last few years. It took that long to catch up because of the fact that we do our reval every 5 years by state constitution. So last year was the 5th year, so that's why you saw the drop. However, this year we did see an increase of $10.5 million, so we're up to $722,476,271. So just rule of thumb is that what that means is that for every dollar on the tax rate, we can raise $722,000. So if you think of it that way, that's one of the easier ways to think of it. The town council is recommending the following for a bottom line budget. Last year, again, it was the current year is $9,656,419, and this year they're proposing a budget of $9,996,942, or 3.53% increase, or a $340,523 increase over the previous year. The enterprise funds are looking at an increase of $62,293, and all other funds is $278,230. So we break it down this way. The general fund is $6,880,668, or an increase of 3.5%. The next is the special revenue funds. That's what we have: the library, the recreation revolving, and the solid waste. These funds are increasing $47,809, or 5%, to $1,005,493. In the enterprise funds, which do not impact taxation, but impact the water and sewer payers, is the enterprise fund. The water is decreasing $14,238, or 1.5%, and the sewer is increasing $76,531, or 6.95%. And this is just to show the breakdown of the budget by fund. The general fund makes up 54%, the revenue enterprise funds make up 37%, and the special funds make up 9%. And this is just another way to compare all of those budgets as well. The next slide is just saying, where's it going? For operational, healthcare, we received our rates from the Health Trust, and we're seeing a guaranteed maximum rate increase of 6%. So that's $58,758. We're seeing, while there's no increases in the retirement contribution for the employers this year, we will see an increase under that. It's $29,066. Workers' compensation and the property liability insurance are both increasing. We're seeing $11,399 in workers' compensation and $13,660 in property and liability insurance. We're increasing the merit pool by $10,000. Election salaries are going up slightly due to the number of elections in the coming year. And police salaries are going up by $23,815. That's due to the collective bargaining agreement that was passed last year. As for contribution to the capital reserve funds, we are increasing the building improvements capital reserve funds by $50,000. That's just because we've been using the fund, and we're going to start to replenish it again. Stormwater, we're looking at a $25,000 increase. And the McAllen Dam, we're also looking at a $25,000 increase to that fund. And recreational facilities, $18,666, and these funds will replace aging playground equipment. And in water and sewer, we're seeing increases, and all of these increases are due to having to operate 2 plants during the next fiscal year, as Sean Gregg mentioned. The sludge disposal will have an increase of $25,000. Electricity for wastewater is at $60,000. Chemicals for wastewater is increased by $13,000, and lab for wastewater is an increase of $10,000. Our revenues, we're estimating a 3% increase in the revenues in the coming year, or $172,573. This would have a total revenue of $5,615,346. Mainly this is due to increases in the motor vehicle registrations and increases in building permits and planning applications. This slide is the default budget. We didn't discuss that at the last meeting. This is actually approved by the town council, and it's on their agenda for this Wednesday. This is as we've proposed to the council. what the default budget is, it's if the budget were to fail at the town meeting vote, this would be the budget that goes into place. The default budget is $9,895,953, or $100,989 less than the proposed budget, or $239,534 higher than the current year. The way we determine the default budget is you take the previous year's budget, you subtract any one-time expenditures, and add contractual obligations. So we don't usually put one-time expenditures into the operating budget that much. Those are like if you were to buy a cruiser out of the budget. We do that out of capital reserve fund. But we do have the contractual obligations of healthcare, raises for collective bargaining units, and other items such as that. So that's why we're seeing that increase. So here's my warning. This next slide is for an estimate only using the data as we have today. I don't want people to come next October saying you told me the tax rate was going to be X, Y, Z. So if we were to set if the budget were to pass and the tax rate were to set with all the numbers that we've mentioned today, the gross appropriation would be $9,996,940. Then you subtract the revenues, which is the $5,615,346. Then you add overlay. What overlay is the amount of money we usually have to pay in abatements. We've actually built that up over time, so we're fine. We haven't had that high number of abatements. We would have had it last year when we did the reval. So our overlay is very healthy. That's separate from the fund balance, just to let people know that. Then you add the war service credits. This is the exemptions that veterans receive. So we have to add the expense of $168,500. So what the net town appropriation is $4,570,096. You figure that in with the assessed value. The tax rate would be $6.33 per thousand. So that would be an increase of 31 cents per thousand. The average home in Newmarket is worth about $250,000. Currently, the town portion of the tax bill is $1,505 annually. The proposed budget, if it were to pass as is, would be $1,582 annually, a 5% increase, or $77 annually. And that is all I have.
Flew through that.
I'm getting used to it.
How many times have you done this?
I know.
Yeah. Excuse me. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open it up for public comment or questions, if there's anybody out there. And we'll close public comment then. Okay, can I get a proposal to accept the town council proposed budget?
So moved. Second?
Second. Discussion.
Wow.
You're scratching your beard blue.
The reason why I'm scratching my beard is Matt's not here, so it's tough. We're looking at a $6.33 tax rate, 20 cents less than what he is proposing on the last page, page 59, for his forecast. We're working on fiscal year 2017. We're looking at a 653. That's what he's forecast. It's 20 cents less. Fiscal year 2018, we're looking at 822. That's still a $2 increase over 1 year difference. And I understand that it's a.
And this is again.
I know it's worst
but
case
I
scenario.
want to make sure this is clear. That is the most worst case scenario, as if we had no fund balance to be able to offset. We are very healthy with our fund balance. Also, if our revenues pretty much dried up and left it as it was. I just want to make sure it's clear out there that the $8, and even the reduction between the $6.53 that I proposed by 20 cents to $6.33 that is on that page as well. We found it. It wasn't a contentious issue of reducing it. And I want to also say that the exercise of having the 5-year forecast, while we include it in the operating budget, by charter is actually separate from the operating budget. But we include it just for FYI. In the future, I may do it separately, because, so there is no confusion, we can have a longer discussion there.
I understand that it's a forecast and we're looking towards the future as a worst-case scenario, but it's also, even if it was cut in half, it's still an eye-opening experience to what could happen, number one. And number two, $8, if we were to take 30 cents off of what the current rate is and just go 1 year further, is still a $2 increase. And I know we project and we look towards the worst case scenario, but best case scenario, even if it's 75 cents over?
No, it wouldn't even be that high, because one thing that he also includes in that projection is the annual contribution to the capital reserve funds. Much like the capital improvement committee puts in every contribution, they don't, on the other side, they don't take the withdrawal. So basically for those numbers, he was taking the figures from the CIP recommendations in their budget, because we do have their estimates for the next few years, including it. The reduction wasn't, like we discussed at the last meeting, the reductions that I made was because those funds were already available. So we could reduce it because we just need to withdraw it from the capital reserve funds already there.
So
Do I see
I'm
that?
trying to find the best words to say it. So what you're saying is, and I don't know if I should be at the podium or not.
No, you can be. You're
That's up to
you're a
you.
budget committee member.
In years past and currently, you're saying that you don't want to use general fund surplus,
Fund balance.
fund balance to buy down the tax rate.
That's not what I said. No, we actually are using fund balance to buy down the tax rate.
But you're using it within,
We use-
budget?
Yes.
okay, that's where I want the public to make sure of, is that all
No,
of a
we
sudden,
always- yeah.
when we go from 633 to 8,
And
$8.
again, we're not.
I'm not saying that's going to
But
happen.
you're publicly saying that again and again, that we're going from $6.33 to $8. Yes, that was one estimate. That was the worst case scenario.
Okay,
I want
well,
to make
if I
sure
go
it's
the- if-
publicly stated that that's
But hold
not.
on, if I go 2 years further, we're talking 845. I go 3 years further, we're talking 905.
And again-
That's where it concerns me as a tax rate payer and a consumer, that all of a sudden we're going to have this giant hike and we're going to buy down the tax rate, because I was part of, and that's where I'm coming from, I was part of the previous administration and town council where we decided to say, you know what, we're just going to buy down the tax rate point blank to 11 cents.
And there were no laws in place, as there are now, that forbid us from doing so.
Okay.
We put in policies that make us have between 5 and 10% of our fund balance at all times in there. Could the council override that? Yes, but I can as a town administrator. But that's an elected ability. And
The
you,
only reason why
and
I'm asking this is I just don't want to see the public all of a sudden have a bubble and they realize, or they don't realize that that's going to happen.
if I'm still here and that comes up, there'll be reductions in other places.
Can I ask where your reductions in other places are going to happen?
I don't know
Because
yet.
I'll be honest, Steve, this is a pretty tight budget. 1%.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Where are you
Reduction in
going
other
to
places would-
find
what-
reduction in other budgets.
Reductions would mean elimination.
Okay.
I'm not going to come out here and say where.
Right.
That's because, again, as I've said many times, that is the worst case scenario. That is a 2008 plus situation again. And with the
Assuming revenues dry up.
revenues dry up, you get the perfect storm of H1N1 hitting because the healthcare rates go sky high. We lose all our revenues because the markets crash. The housing crash at the same time. That would be the worst case scenario. I mean, I'll tell you, there are some issues which we never got assistance from anybody that are going to impact us. We're going to only have one healthcare provider probably in the market to provide for municipalities. I never heard anybody saying that that's going to be a problem. We're going to lose our property liability insurance competition. Nobody ever saw that as going to be a problem. We've been discussing that for years. So those are things that also are going to impact. Is it going to impact us that much? No. But you did see some of it this year with an increase of about $10,000.
I'm good.
If I can just jump in,
Thank you.
I see where Blue is going here, and I think really where the confusion lies is calling this a forecast. Because a forecast and a worst-case scenario, in my mind, are two different things. A forecast is most likely to happen,
Yep.
not what is the best case to happen or the worst case to happen. So I think that's really where, calling this a forecast is creating a lot of concern.
Yeah.
And has in our previous meetings as well. And I think that, I don't know if there's a way to resolve
And I can tell you, I've sat here and I've presented it what I thought was the real forecast, and I get, there's no way that's what the number's going to be. You have rose-colored glasses on. So it all depends on what 7 are sitting on behind the council desk and what 11 are sitting here. I could present one year and it comes back and it's completely wrong the next year. So it's difficult.
Is there a way to present 3 scenarios, i.e. if everything goes
I can
okay,
present 20
most
scenarios on
likely, or,
everything.
You know what I'm saying? At least,
But again,
just having it only.
And again, this is the second time we've had to go through this. Third time, one time we did it on our own. This is the second time by law that we've had to go through the exercise.
Yeah.
My thought would be, if everyone's happy with the way the school does it, I'll do what the school does.
I think the challenge here is when we're doing this is, there's been a lot of momentum over the last few years, and I know Al Zink, and we've talked a lot about how we need to do 5-year. We got into the charter about 5-year projections. The challenge is we can't even really project a year out sometimes, and we're trying to go out 5 with the data that we kind of have, but we don't have. And so, even my own business, when we're trying to project, we can project all we want 90 days, but then we're going to be reprojecting in 30 days when something's changed. So to me, looking at some of the revenues and stuff like that, because this was, I was the henny penny sky was falling. I saw this like, oh my, this is going to be, but as I started going through the numbers, this truly is like, if there's no revenue, if there's no this, there's no that. And based on where we are, that's not going to happen. To Blue's point, this budget is tight. Steve, for the last 3-4 years, these budgets have been extremely tight. You guys are doing everything you need to do. I think the biggest concern that we had coming in is knowing some of the issues that we have in the town. Our budgets are tight. It's great. We're trying to balance what we have to do and what we need to do and what the public can pay all together. But when it all comes out, we kind of see some things coming down the road that we know someday we're going to have to take care of.
And I'd love to address that. You're absolutely right. Since I've been here, we've been putting off our capital needs because there's a 500-pound gorilla hanging over our head as well.
The school, yes.
And we've been saying, no, we'll hold off until that thing's addressed. We luckily put in for the wastewater plant and the wells because those are desperately needed. We had no choice there. But other capital items, we've been holding off because we don't know what's going to happen. And it's good planning that way because you don't want to we don't want to present a large capital item such as a road bond the same year as a school bond, whatever it may be, because odds are they're both going to fail.
Right.
Because you're asking for too much at one point in time. But we have been holding off because we don't know what's going on. That's impacting us not only that our equipment's getting older and we have to do stuff with what we do more than with what we have. The operating budgets have been remaining pretty flat, and that means, on the flip side, is that we have less money going into fund balance because of the tightness there. We manage. We made it through last year with the blizzards. That was an act of God. There was nothing more we could do there, and we got through, and we did put some money into fund balance, but it was tight. I think it was the year before I got here, we were putting in almost $500,000 in fund balance. And now we're down to 100,000 or less, which you should be. You should be budgeting where you need to spend. But we also don't want to get into the point where in March I have to say, sorry, you can't do X, Y, Z because we just don't have the money. And we haven't gotten there yet. But if we continue to have a flat budget without any reasonable increase, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Because it's just the cost of doing business does go up.
I think this has it has some
Yeah.
increase in it, and I think that was a view that the council took too, is that things are coming up and we do need to spring for it, and so we did go a bit up.
So to add the levity, what is the difference between Matt's forecast and your forecast?
My forecast would be, do I see us having some impacts? Yes. And I'll tell you, and I mentioned some. One, we're going to see an increase in healthcare. The reasoning, not only because there's only probably one provider, but also because of the changing in the federal regulations and how that's going to impact us. I see liability insurance going up because there's only going to be one provider. I'm not sure how much people understand that. Insurance companies don't want to insure municipalities. We get sued a lot. We also have some very costly claims because of just the nature of our business. We have people running into burning buildings, and we have people being shot at with guns. Business-wise, that's not probably the best thing to insure. So we have a hard time doing that. In the mid-'80s, what happened was the insurance market went to two communities, Portsmouth and I believe the other one was Lebanon, and said, we're not insuring your liability any longer. And all of a sudden, there was a domino effect, and this is everywhere in the country, that most municipalities were not getting liability insurance from the private sector. So what they did, and how all our insurance works, is by pool. We pool our money together, and if there's a claim, we withdraw from the pool. And we have investments and situations like that. It's not a tip. We say insurance. It's not insurance. It's a trust. But until last year, there was competition. There were actually more than one trust for municipalities and schools at the same time. Healthcare, you had the Health Trust or LGC, and you had Primex, and you had School Care. And on the liability side, you had Primex and the Property Liability Trust, LGC. And when the Secretary of State a few years ago said there was some issues, they're closing down the Property Liability Trust. They're going to write off their business until June. And then the Primex pulled out of the healthcare business. And if the merger goes between Cigna and Blue Cross Blue Shield, those are the two products that School Care and Health Trust offer. So you've got one market, one product, two carriers. So that's going to be an impact in the coming years. The other large impact will be the retirement system. We don't receive any contributions from the state for police and fire. We used to. The state requires us to be a member of their retirement system, but they don't pay us any longer to be part of that, and we can't withdraw. So police and fire are there, and we've continuously seen increases in employer rates on retirement. So I do see that as well, and that's for everyone across the board. Capital, I see increases there. We got to address the roads. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's going to happen. On the plus side, we're going to see, and it's a plus. When I say plus, please understand everything I'm saying is business-wise. It's not the personal size of this. We're going to see retirements. And with retirements, usually the replacement employees are less expensive than those who are in the positions currently. I see as of right now, the economy is strong. We are seeing increase in rates. So we may see return of investments. Building permits are still being pulled. The value of the town, I think one of the best investments we've made is on downtown, and with the private investments, it's increased the value of the town. People want to live here. I've discussed it with the assessors that if the school issue is ever finalized, either which way, we would see a significant increase in our value. Just because that's the question looming over our heads right now, is what's going to happen. So, I mean, I don't see a dire situation as $8. I see a slow, steady, when I say slow, increase. What would offset those increases is our property values increasing. Because I just can't see us continuing to have no increase or minimal increase in our operations. And I'm not even saying that to add new services. I'm just saying that because to maintain and what the expectations are of what we have.
Steve, you mentioned opening this up to a larger discussion, the forecasting, maybe pulling it out of the budget.
Yeah.
With whom? Town council?
No, actually, the charter states I present it. So it would be me and the finance director. I just pull it out and say, okay, here's a separate document, and this is our forecast, and I'd have the finance director come in and make the presentation.
Make the presentation to the town council or to the budget?
We have to provide you, the budget committee, a copy as well.
Okay. Have you ever discussed doing like a joint forecast of some kind with the school?
We would love to. The school is not governed by the town charter. So what you have is two entities. One, it's required of me because that's what the law that governs us. It's a highly recommended of the school. But it's not by law. We haven't discussed it because I think this will be the, I don't know if they actually, do you know, did they actually present a forecast last year? School? And I don't know, I mean, I'd love to. I'd love to be able to say, look, this is where we are. But it's just two different, those are the situations where you run into that there are definitely two different governments in town.
I think that the school can, in talking to Christine, they can forecast their budget to a point, but because of the 500-pound gorilla that's hanging over their head, they've been scared to do any kind of forecasting because that's going to play into whenever we come to a solution, whatever that may be.
Well, you mentioned that there's obviously dependencies. You don't want to do something big the same year or whatever, but it doesn't seem to be that there's any coordination around that. And I understand completely two separate bodies.
And I would say, and actually,
I would think that would be the beginning of
and
it.
I would say in this community, there's more coordination than most other communities in the state. I could tell you my first year, the superintendent and I talked. I said, look, I'm under the gun with the EPA. I need to do a $14 million bond for the wastewater plant. And they completely understood that and said, we don't want to roll the die and do both in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
So we do coordinate those things.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan?
So here's what I'm struggling with about the view. Won't call it a forecast, but the very conservative view of fiscal year 18 that's laid out here. We've discussed it as a worst-case revenue scenario, but if I take the enterprise fund revenue out of it for a minute, the revenue decrease in fiscal year 18 is $121,000, which is about 16 cents on the tax rate, if I'm doing my math correctly. The bulk of the increase is actually coming up on the cost side of this forecast. The fact that you're going up $225,000 on comp, you're going up $600,000 on other costs, you're going up $170,000 on debt service. Is there more conservatism here than just on the revenue side of it? Because if the only conservatism was on the revenue side of it, then we'd have a 16 cent
And that's why I said
problem.
about the part of this also includes what the CIP committee's list of all those projects that we said, look, there's cash on hand for many of those. So there's other expenses in there. Debt service, we have no plans for a bond. The only debt service that would be in there is what we currently have out there for the downtown, which is done through a capital reserve fund. And the second is what we have for land that we purchase through conservation. I just want to make something else clear. The Budget Committee is not approving that tonight.
That's where I was just going to go.
The Budget Committee is only approving the $9,996,542.
I want to pull us back a little bit because I think we're getting caught up in this forecast view, whatever we want to call it. Really what we're here to discuss is the budget for, fiscal year 2017. And I know that some of these numbers are scaring us because I think some of us are feeling we're playing it too safe in 2017, but I think that's what we're really here to discuss is that budget and not the, we'll be sitting here and we'll be discussing next year the 2018 and we'll probably be having these same discussions because there will be an impact. I mean, the other thing that's happening next year that we haven't talked about is there's going to be a political election that could change the whole landscape on insurance and everything.
It changes the economy.
That's right. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of factors that are going to come into play in the next year that could just totally blow this projection completely. We might as well just shred it right now. So, what I would say is, let's kind of stick to this budget and decide, where are we with this budget? And do we feel good about it? Is there any discussion on this budget or where are we? Not that I want to squash all this. I just think we need to kind of stick to what's at hand.
Well, to take that one step further, he just spoke about debt services. We're looking at a reduction of $60,000 in debt services from 2016 to 2017. But then again, we're looking at almost $150,000 a year later. That's the reason why I brought up the increases of what we were talking about as far as a potential worst-case scenario.
Hang on, Blue.
And I agree. We should be looking at what our budget is today, but I'm also looking at,
I won't propose it. if
this
you
is
don't
part
want
of the budget. This is part of forecasting what the
it.
budget's going to be.
It's not part of the budget.
It's not, I misspoke. It's
No,
not part of the budget.
Because
You're
some of
correct.
those increases that you're speaking of in that debt service are part of also the sewer and the water plant that they're gonna start to hit because we're running, that's part of that. And it's the water, or the rates are gonna take care of some of that, so,
All of it.
okay.
The only reason why I brought it up initially was 2014, 15, 16, and now 17, Matt's been pretty close to what we're going to be. And then all of a sudden, in 2018, we got a $2 increase.
With all due respect, 2015, 16, 17, there were no forecasts done.
There weren't, but we knew it was, Close.
And second of all, we did the budget. We came in with those figures. We came very close with every budget we did. So when it comes to what we're predicting for this increase, that was one individual for the worst case scenario. When it comes to the actuality of where we are now, I would see us much closer to where we are for our operating budget this year. Because because one thing this also didn't take into effect, I have to get through the council.
and please forgive me, I'm not holding your feet to the fire.
Well,
I'm
it's
not
just
saying
we're
that that's
not
what
paying,
the
we're
bottom
not
line
looking
is.
at the operating
It's just
budget.
more of what Dave has said, and many other council people and budget people, that all of a sudden we go from 633, if we're 31, whatever the final number is, it escapes me, to 8. And that is when it's a forecast, and you look at that, you're looking at, okay, next year, we're going to have an election. Some of us may be sitting here, some of us may not, and we're going to be looking at you, and you're going to be going, well, it's now $8.
Now, first of all,
And
you're
that's
putting that
where
in
we're
my.
gonna be
you-
going,
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
whoa,
hold
wait a
on,
second.
hold on. You said next year I'm going to say it's going to be $8.
I'm not saying.
That's what you said. So I want clarification on
apologize.
that. Okay.
The forecast says
There is a forecast out
it
there.
could be 822.
It could be.
That's not you.
That's the worst case scenario.
That's the business finance administrator who works.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
What's the ultimate thing we want to get to? Are we saying my budget's too low this year?
No.
Do you want to add? Or are we saying you're concerned that I have too much in it? Because right now, I mean, I didn't even bring the staff to address that tonight because we're here to talk about the fiscal year 17 budget. So I guess that's my clarification. I don't have an answer for you for whatever you're going to ask because I don't have everybody here. Because we were here to discuss this fiscal year 17 budget.
Personally, roads have been over the budget for a long time.
Correct.
They're probably going to be continued to be under budgeted
It would
for
probably
a
be-
long time.
Unless we do something significant, it'll be one of the
I
first things
travel
we
Ash Swamp
cut.
Road every single day. I
Correct.
travel Grant Road every single day. I know what it's like.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, are we setting ourselves up for a balloon years down the road by continuing to keep a flat budget? And listen, Steve, you did great work. I'm not sitting here saying you
Well,
didn't do
what
great work.
I'm asking, though,
I
is-
didn't say your department heads, let me finish. I didn't say your department heads did great work. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying is, as far as us as a town, as citizens of a town, are we having too much expectation of keeping a flat budget without having services that are provided, meaning flat roads, police department, fire, all of those above board things, where we're looking at each other going, well, how come this isn't happening? Well, you know why? Because it's not in the budget.
Part of that, I'd say minimally, yes. There are things that we're not addressing because it's not in the budget. We've been flat. But we've all been saying that. The council's been saying that we've been putting off the roads because of this. I've been saying that. The department heads been saying it. The budget committee's been saying that. Is it a $2 increase in the no. Let's be real. I mean, that would be if we paved everything right away. That's why we're waiting for a plan to come forward. And that's why we also have said many times that we don't look at paying it with cash, that we bond the roads, because then you have a smaller impact by paying the bond back over the time versus having a one-time $500,000 contribution to a capital reserve fund. I think that's what we need to look at. I don't want to ask for the funds this year because I don't have the final plan yet.
Right.
I can't come into this committee or go to in front of the voters and say, give me $500,000. Well, what are you going to do with it? I don't know. I'm going to pave roads. What roads? Don't know.
I understand completely what you're saying. This is my last question on this topic altogether, which is, what is the value of having this forecast in this document at all? At this point, if it's not even close to being accurate in your mind.
And I can tell you, we've gone through this exercise. Every year I've been here, we presented it many different times, and it happens, and this is the same thing how we end it. What's the point?
Right.
Because like I said, one time we present one, you guys have rose-colored glasses, and there's no way we're going to have that much revenue. Odds are, if we actually looked at where we are today, we're probably pretty close. If not, we would have been more conservative than that. This is the sky is falling situation, or we got to be very conservative in exactly what you're saying. Well, we know this is probably not going to happen this way unless we have a major crash. Well, we get it both ways. We either told you got to predict for the major crash, or you can't predict for the major crash. So you're right. The exercise, by law, we have to do it.
Okay, so by law, we have to do it, but obviously, the fear is that next year we'll be sitting here and well, it was in writing in last year's thing, so.
Next year, I'm not going to include it in the operating budget.
Right? You know, so I think that's the fear is, okay, you guys got a heads up on this before, that this was potentially coming. Worst case scenario, well, guess what? It's a worst case scenario. I think that's where everybody's
I
at. I
understand.
just don't think it leads to a very progressive conversation.
But and understand that you're discussing 24% of the overall cost, probably much more in depth. And we're probably providing with, especially trying to forecast a lot more. And we're, as I said, we're the one who's still being
Scrutinized.
and also we have the gun over our head too, because we don't want to come in with an increase the same year as a bond, a significant one, because we need to do something. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that too.
One last time.
One last time. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. It's useless, pretty much.
It's all of what people
It's
want.
worst case scenario. And I'd
Worst
like
case
to
scenario.
move to make a motion to accept the budget, if I can, for 2017.
Already been made.
Already been made.
I will second it.
Already been
And
seconded.
seconded.
Let's move to a vote.
Is discussion over? Have we been talking about anything but 2017? I mean, all joking aside, I mean, it's some healthy discussion because we're looking more forward than we have in a long time. I love that we're doing that. But the reality is it's a tight budget. It's a great budget. I got to give you pats on the back because every year you manage to turn in a, fairly tight budget and you come in within 1.5% almost every year for the last 3 years. So, kudos. I mean, I know we're grilling you, but
No, it's fine.
and it's really because you're doing such a good job that we're like, are you doing too good of a job keeping a tight budget? And I think that's our concern. But you've been doing a great job.
And I understand. And I have no issue with the questioning. And I think that you've heard from all of us that yes, we do realize we're putting off things today that we need to address, and we're coming up with a plan to do so.
The only difference that I will say, and I can say this, being this 3 years, is there's a plan now. 4 years ago, we didn't have, we really weren't making plans for this. They were falling, and we just kept pushing it off, and then we had no choice. Now I think we're at least preparing a little bit better. It's still going to hurt, but we're preparing better. So,
Just one comment. We've gotten some money back at the end of the year to buy as a refund coming back to the taxes. Before we vote on this budget for 2017, I think it's at least worthwhile for us to think about if there's money coming back in 2016 and 2017. Do we, rather than point that at one of these larger efforts that's coming back to us? I think we heard that our current budget covers 1 mile of road, and yet we took more than that back last year. So as we vote on 2017, I think it's up to those of us here to think about what that would do for us if we have the opportunity to take advantage of that this year and next.
Yeah, and the issue with fund balance is that we haven't been getting the fund balance from reduction in expenditures. That's typically where you get it, but we've been getting it because the revenues have been coming in higher. I wouldn't want to try to estimate that motor vehicle registrations that can continue.
I wouldn't say we ever try to estimate. that,
Right.
But if presented with, what would be recommendation of the council?
Hey, right now, we're recommending use of $500,000 from fund balance. And that brings us down to about 8% of where our fund balance would be, which is right in the middle where we want to be, between 5 and 10. Last year, because of the additional revenues, we were able to increase that to about 575. So we were able to use that to offset the increase a little bit more. And we're doing much better than we used to be, because it used to be down to 435 and then 400,000 the year before. So that's why we've been including it in the budget, is because in the past, when you do it in October, one, you're not thinking of it as we are now as part of the budgeting process. And two, you're not showing what the impact really is on the taxes when you're voting on the budget. You're voting on one budget, thinking this is what the impact will be, and then in October you say, well, I've got extra fund balance, reduce it down so it's either a flat tax rate or no increase, and that's when you typically get, oops, I don't have the fund balance again the following year, up it goes, and it just replaces it. I try to look at the fund balance as the contribution to capital reserve funds. So in case there was, for some reason, we didn't have that fund balance, we wouldn't contribute to those capital reserve funds one year. So it's sort of like, okay, I've got this extra money, I'm going to put it in my savings account. That's what the fund balance transfer sort of, in my mind, is.
Yep.
So which I'd rather do it that way and try to keep the tax rate and the budget as flat as possible than increase it one year and then not have something to replace it the next year, especially for the one time.
Aren't we facing a situation where we won't have it and need to spend it? That's the conversation we've been having about, do we need to bond for big things that are coming in the town? We've heard about the school, we've heard about roads. Are we not? Are we setting ourselves up to have to borrow?
Yeah, we don't have the fund balance to do the road projects. We wouldn't have, that's
Too big.
too big.
It's too big.
Yeah.
We've got 18 miles of road, right? I think was the count that we heard.
Oh, no, we got more than that.
That
That
would
needed to be
that
done.
That need to be done,
Completely
right.
Yeah.
So no, that would be too big. And I think when we're talking 18 miles, that's, and also how much you want to do. I mean, if you just go in, pave it, or just do a reconstruction, that's one thing. But if you also want to do an actual reconstruction and improve the systems, that's what if we were going to get in there and do it, I'd rather do it all at once. As we're speaking, that's one of the things that we're adding on to this plan now is utilities. We're talking about all this road maintenance. Well, we got to tie that in with utility maintenance so we're not opening up the same roads twice. Mm-hmm. So that's some of the additional costs there. I just don't, I don't see us having those capital projects right now that the withdrawal from the fund balance to offset. We're not proposing anything. I mean, if we had a ambulance or a good sized fire truck, that could be one, but they also get their money somewhere else. But just those kind of projects. The roads, we either got to put money aside or we're going to have to borrow.
Well, I think that's the major thing that's coming to play with whether it's the town side or the school side. The expenditures are coming up. The tax whatever difference is a drop in the bucket compared to what we're going to have to spend.
Yeah.
So it'll just scratch the surface. So I think, I understand completely where you're coming from. I see some of the capital things being so much bigger that it's not going to make a difference.
I mean, the good thing is, I think most of our capital, besides roads, would just be renovations or improvements. Because, facilities-wise, town side, we're very good. The highway and fire is a good facility. Police probably needs some work, and I know the community center needs some work, but it's mainly repairs, not anything structural at this point in time. The only other building that would probably need some kind of significant investment would be this one. Heat, windows, those kind of items would probably have to be addressed sometime in the future, and that's why we're putting, again, money aside to try to address that over periods of time. Because, we do have a good significant amount in the reserve funds. We need to start using that, too, to start addressing those items.
Dan?
I guess I'll wrap up my thoughts on the issue like this. I hear you. We can't budget for things that you don't have a plan from the department heads that specifically identifies what they're going to address. But hearing that comment in light of the amount of need that was presented to us during the CIP process is frustrating. That the department heads can come forward with so many things, documented, quotes, pictures. They took the group around town on the rec bus to look at this stuff, but then there's not any sort of a plan that's been brought to you. My suggestion would be that you, as the town administrator, need to demand a little better from the people who report to you, because I came out of the CIP process this year feeling like the whole thing was enormously cheapened by the way that it ended up, because I felt that we were going in trying to do what is asked in the process, to come up with a long-term capital plan for the town. And we definitely, on the project side, saw a tremendous amount of need that was identified, and that was good. But where the loop broke was that the spending plan to address that was totally disconnected from the need that was identified. So that's just my recommendation, I guess, having been through it, is if those detailed plans haven't been brought to you, then you really need them.
And I'm going to address a couple things here. One, the department heads do provide me with a plan of what they need by the CIP. They explain what the cost is going to be. And if you look at the CIP, it usually says what year they're recommending that's going to be. What nobody took into consideration, including the Capital Improvement Committee, was withdrawing funds from the current capital reserve funds. The Capital Improvement Committee's job is to forecast and make recommendations on what we need to have done for capital projects. It's up to the town administrator and his or her operating budget, and then the council and the budget committee to make the proposals on what should be spent. And as I've said many times when it came to the capital reserve funds, many of the projects that were on the list for this year can be done by withdrawing from current funding sources. And that wasn't proposed when the budget was proposed by the CIP committee in the department head's budget. That's why it looked like there was such a draconian cut between that budget and my budget, because I realized that, look, recreation was a perfect example. He even came in and said, yes, I can do those projects with the amount of money I have in the capital reserve funds. So yes, there's a lot of needs, and I will go to the mat that we do need to continuously improve our facilities, but we also need to make sure that we manage the funds we already have. And that's why there was the large, I think if we came in which we are getting the plans from the department heads, and they work very hard at doing this. When we get those and they come to the council, it's the council's job to determine whether or not that they believe that we should be withdrawing at that point in time. You know, even if I put it in my budget, and even if the budget committee passed it, it doesn't mean the council has to allow those funds to be released at the same time. So I think that the CIP plan and the CIP funding are two different items. I agree. I want to look at a way to do it. I'm looking at the way other larger communities do it, that, you have a vote, and this is your annual CIP, and the council votes, and then comes the budget committee, and that's what gets funded. So it may be a lump sum of $2 million, X amount bonding, X amount this, but that's what's going to get funded annually. Problem in our system of government, it doesn't work that way as it works in other council forms, because we have to go to the voters, and that has to be voted on separately. But I just want to make sure it's clear that we do get the plans. This was probably the best CIP we've gotten in 10 years, and I think everybody admits that. They've seen more information now, and it's more of a plan than just documents sitting there. It's a document that's going to continue to grow, and we're going to refine and get better as it goes along. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that everybody's been working hard on that, and we'll get more information from them.
So back to our budget. Are we good with 2017 budget? Are we ready to vote? Or is there still more discussion?
Motion on the table.
Any more discussion? All right. All those in favor of the town council proposed budget of $9,996,942, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Passed.
So we'll now go on the ballot as recommended. It's not unanimous, but,
Yeah, we're missing two.
yep. That's it. You're done with the town.
All right. Do I
Thank
have a
you,
motion
Steve.
to adjourn?
You.
Steve.
Thank you, Steve. You'll continue to get grilled on this.
Oh, I don't-
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Good night, everyone.